only has 43 events in the next couple of days, but that sounds great. Jim Ruxin, after a run of Japanese and American films, what's coming up next?
We're going to India to see White Tiger. It'll be a week from this coming Thursday, so I think that's the 22nd of June. And it's sort of a crime Indian mafia story, but it's really the story of a poor rural man's realization of what capitalism has done to people in this world. Very interesting film. It's called White.
It's a brutal movie. Very, very difficult. It's great. Excellent.
It really needed that help, Stan. But it's not, there's not much blood. So, but it is a crime drama. So forewarned. And that's on the June 22nd, Thursday night at 7:30. And the link is always in the any temple bulletin in the day or 3 before it.
Super. Thank you for that.
Where can you see it?
Amazon.
So, Jim, that's different than the 15th that was previously announced?
Yes, that's different. She got that wrong. So it's the 22nd.
Okay. I'm just trying to pick up the last 5 minutes. Okay, checking in. So we did check in with Cindy. Is there a name yet?
Yes, Stella, which they haven't even seen Streetcar Named Desire, so they don't know what we all think about. And the middle name is Sol, which I didn't know. S-O-L is a Hebrew word meaning blessing or peace.
Okay.
So it's Stella Sol Letterer.
Mazel tov, mazel tov. Okay, and just checking in. Does anyone have any other checking in things going on besides Brad leaving and Herman arriving? And okay, I have just a quickie. Grandchild number 6 graduated high school on Friday. And grandchild number 2 graduates college next week. So things
He's moved on.
I try to make all the grandchildren, including Maya, understand that the purpose of their getting employed is so that they'll better be able to care for us. I mean, that is, that's the rule. Okay, anyone?
Stan, Mona is having a reading of a full-length play on Wednesday, the 14th at Theater 40.
I'm going to do it now.
Okay.
Stan, may I interject one other announcement? The Braid is having a performance this afternoon, and it's in the Temple Bulletin, 4 o'clock, and it's which campus? At the Irmis campus.
Irmis.
Okay, great. Now, I think we're good. It's really great to see everybody.
Can I interject one?
Please.
As long as everybody is proud of something. My granddaughter just graduated from college with honors in 2 BAs and has been accepted to law school at the university, at Hastings University in San Francisco.
Fabulous. Here, I'll give you one. My family came home from Europe last night and have not stopped. The girls they had 5 sold out performances in all of their locations. And they were dancing on sidewalks, in parks, wherever besides the venues that they were supposed to dance at. And these kids haven't stopped talking about it yet. I'm still getting text messages, even though I won't see them today. Hopefully they'll get some rest today. It was an amazing 2 weeks, and very grateful that they got to go, and they're very grateful that they got to go. And it was amazing.
Nachas from their kinder, right?
That's fantastic. Yeah.
Dance their way through Europe.
Okay, we are plunging into the text. I'd like you to move to page 960 in the Plout. And it's kind of funny. Every once in a while, we encounter a text that is embedded in the liturgy. And when I read the text, all I want to do is sing, which is a very bad thing. So if you look on page 960, verse, let's see, 960, verses 35, 36.
Chapter,
What chapter?
This
Chapter and
is
verse.
Numbers chapter 10, verses 35 and 36.
Chapter 10.
And this is a text which is sung every Shabbos morning at the beginning of the Torah service, and in the traditional congregation. And I look at it, and I'm going to save you the problem, but I look at it and I'm singing. And the verse 35 is sung when the Torah is taken out, and verse 36 when the Torah is being put back. Now, just for the sake of fun, on page 960, we're looking at chapter 10, verse 34 and 36. Do you notice anything in the Hebrew?
Yeah, there's an upside down nun.
I wouldn't criticize it, but there are two upside down nuns. One at the end of verse 34
Mhm.
and one at the end of verse 36. So that takes these two verses and encapsulates them. Very unusual, extraordinarily unusual. Okay, scholars of Torah, Bible scholars from across the world. What could they mean? The two nuns. I don't know if you make a plural nunim, but the two nuns. What could they mean?
are they actually in the Torah also?
Yes. What could they mean? Any thoughts, Sukasa?
I'm just reading the description below, and it says a special sign, an inverted nun, encloses verses 35 and 36, suggesting that they were somehow transposed.
But that phrase, suggesting that they were somehow transposed, is already an option as to what they mean. It doesn't mean that we know for a fact that that's what they mean. Okay? Yeah, it's there, suggesting that those two verses are a unit floating somewhere, and they put it in here. What's fun is the constant awareness of the absolute perfection of the Torah dictated by God. And then you have these little strange things that pop up that some scribe at some point it's hard to know. Were they from another place? Did the scribe say, oh my God, this belonged here, but I've already written 4 more books of the Torah scribing. I'm going to just drop it in here so it doesn't get forgotten. I don't know. We don't know. Except we sing it for the Torah service every Shabbos morning. Okay? I can't, it's just so human. It is so human. You are looking at a scribe with a problem 2,000, 1,800 years ago and resolved the problem by dropping this in here so that in 2023, we can say, what the heck is going on without an answer available? Okay, we're going to move on unless there's a comment. I love this. I just totally love it. Where are we? We are in the book of Numbers. We are in chapter 10 of the book of Numbers. Where are the Israelites at this point? This is already pretty far along in the Torah, right? Pretty far along. We're in the book of Numbers. Deuteronomy has almost no history of events and stuff in it. So here we are in Numbers. Where are the Israelites at this point?
They're 3 days away from
David, I see.
the Lord.
David?
I had to unmute myself. As was just about to be said before, they're a couple of days away from Sinai. This is the very beginning of the 40 years.
I mean, if you wonder if it took, why it took 40 years, if it takes 2 books to move 3 days, then of course it's going to take 40 years to get across.
And yet you could argue that the content of this book tells you why it's going to take 40 years.
Yeah, well, I mean, it has that, and it does with the spies and everything else. It tells us that, but it is weird. I mean, Exodus chapter 20 is the 10 Commandments. Exodus chapter 20. Then you have the whole book of Leviticus. We're already into the 10th chapter of Numbers, and we are 2 or 3 days out from Mount Sinai.
Or not.
I'm sorry?
Or not.
I said or not. I mean, some of the things that have happened in between have taken more time than the time that appears to have elapsed. I mean, we've built the ark. We've done all these elaborate things. The camp is picked up and moved several times with the pillar of fire, and it's not like it takes 4 seconds to tear down everything, move it, and then set it up again. So it's more of, we know that things in the Torah aren't bound by a chronological timeline. So we somewhere throughout these books we've just skipped, they've clearly moved more than a few days.
Well, the comment is there's no ein mukdama muchar. There's no chronology in the Torah. Fine. And if you look back over the rabbinic literature, how much time was devoted by the rabbis to reconciling the lack of chronological flow so that it all works, that God said it and it's all perfect, but the chronology seems totally wrong. And the rabbis devote their lives to reconciling events, time calendar, and making the Torah work. Okay? So, I mean, that's fine. I mean, that's good. You'll notice very properly that the Israelites marched from the mountain of the Eternal 3 days, Ark of the Eternal. They have an Ark of the Eternal. And Steve properly asked, well, how did that happen in 3 days? Well, they hung around Mount Sinai a long time. And then they were out, and God's cloud kept above them by day and the pillar of fire by night. This is how they moved. This is how they understand it. All we can say is fine. There is one delightful rabbinic commentary which talks about God saying to Moses, Moses, move out. Not quite the language. Get down from this mountain, get out into the desert, start the process going. Have you ever had a situation in which everyone is busy making preparations and somehow you forget to stop? You forget to start? And it's like that. All these preparations, they're camping there, they're building, they're dancing around a golden calf, they're ordering In-N-Out burger, whatever they're doing. And God finally says, Raid me, Nahar, get off the mountain and get out of here and start going toward the promised land. Boy, are there great sermons in that. People can get so wrapped up in perfecting preparations that they just don't launch what needs to be done. And they wake up one day, time is gone. Time is gone. In verse 35, Vayehi bin Zohar, I'm not going to sing, and it was when the ark was raised up, and Moses said, Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha. Rise up, Kuma Adonai. Great phrase. Rise up. V'yafutzu oivecha could be read as God rise up and scatter Israel's enemies. I mean, it could be read that way. Rise up, scatter, and let all of your foes flee before you. There is an assumption in that verse which is critically important. Kuma Adonai v'yafutzu oivecha. I'm emphasizing. Rise up, God, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee from before you. What's the implication here? Very important.
My translation says advance.
I'm sorry, it says what?
Advance as opposed to rise up.
So does mine.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing it, Kevin. Spell the word that you're saying.
Advance.
Kuma.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. Yes, lakum is to stand up. It could mean that. That's fine. What's the assumption here? Oivecha misanecha. Your enemies, those who hate you. What's the assumption? Important. Those who are our enemies are the enemies of God. Okay? So really important. By the way, I didn't say hello to Barbara, but I am saying hello to Barbara because it's good to see you, Barbara. Hi.
Hi,
Always a pleasure.
for me too.
Thank you. So the point of view of the authors of the Torah is that if you hate the Israelites, you are hating God. That is a pretty serious attachment. Okay? And it's here. Misanecha, oivecha, fine. And then verse.
Wait a minute. Isn't that singular?
Yes.
The enemies of you. You, the people.
Misanecha, your enemy.
Who's you?
God.
God. Rise up or come up or go forward or start moving, God, and scatter your enemies.
And you're saying that your enemies are our enemies. God's enemies are our enemies.
They capitalize your and you.
Yeah.
So that would make it sound like it's referring to God.
So the identification of the people with God and God with the people is important if we're going to read Torah. We aren't just a people entered into covenant with God. What did Ruth say? Whither, I don't know whether she spoke Old English, whither thou goest, I shall go. What comes next?
Your people.
Your people shall be my people.
My people, your God, my God, total identification. Here, total identification. So that those people who go out after Jews are attacking God. Now, we only could put that out into a major magazine article If you attack Jews, you are attacking God, and you are going to rot in hell. So, I mean, if you could do that, that might bring an end to anti-Semitism, though I doubt it. I doubt it. Sforno, one of the commentators, picks up on our discussion and says, right here is the launch of a rapid march to Canaan. Right here. This is when the troops, the people, move out, and they expect to be in the promised land in a very short while. What story comes right after these events? Steve.
The spies?
The 12 spies. And as a result of that, what should have been as launched here, a rapid move, becomes a 40-year total move.
But I have another question.
Please.
That relates to your statement about, and I agree with you, it'd be nice if we could put out there that anyone who hates God hates us.
No, that anyone who hates us hates God.
Say, either way, I think we have to be careful that there's kind of an anthropomorphism in that, because it's only now that we really believe God is universal and there's one God for every person on the planet, regardless of how they see him, compared to the time when all of this is written, when each of these peoples had gods, and we recognized our God was just our God, and they had their gods, and our God was not their God. So by definition, they would be enemies.
Okay, let's just clarify a thing here. I certainly, Effie, you can turn off the sound for a minute. I certainly don't believe that the Torah text emerges out of the wilderness experience. This is a later edited document at a time, Steve, when the notion of God having power over broad parts of earth was more commonly accepted. In other words, we can't keep the chronology as it's written here and understand what's being said. By the time this was edited, written, whatever, post Isaiah, Isaiah 2, whatever, whenever, there is one God. And you mess with God's people, you are messing with that God. So, okay. Now, I want to just make a reference to verse 36. What the heck does that mean? Shuvah, we know the word Shuvah. Shuvah Adonai, return to Shuvah, repentance, return God. Ribavot Alfei Yisrael. Tamara, can you offer? I cannot translate that in a sentence. I can't do it. It's like I was walking down the street and blackbirds have red tips on their wings, and then I saw my friend. What the heck does blackbird wings fit into the sentence? Tamara, how do you understand that? Rivavot Alfei Yisrael. What does it mean?
It's the same way you do. It's the sentence doesn't make sense. The translator is trying to clean it up by saying, you who are Israel's myriad of thousand, but the sentence only says, return Adonai, Israel's myriads of thousands. That's all it says.
So we have I mean, I don't think that it's a major theological issue here. It just, in the editing process, I don't know. It makes no sense. But I will tell you this, the rabbis operated on this verse. I love it. And they said, the larger the number of Israelites, the stronger the presence of God. So one of the ways in which we can help God be manifest in our world, Cindy, is having more grandchildren. Right, I mean, you're doing, now criticism, you're doing your part. But they took this verse to say, the more Jews, the more God. That's all. I have no idea what the original verse meant, but it's a nice meaning. Howard?
You're on mute, Howard.
Howard can't hear.
All right, can you hear me now, Hal?
Yes.
I'm looking at Robert Alter's translation, and it's come back, O Lord, to Israel's teeming myriads. And then in a footnote, he explains that the word to, it's reasonable to, if you look at what was done with in poetry at that time, at the time, ancient poetry, leaving out the preposition like to would be a common thing to do just to make the poetry better and make it more compact. So that's his.
Well, Alter is fabulous. Alter is brilliant. Alter does magnificent stuff. And
he just says it thus seems reasonable to infer that to is implied here. And if you stick in the word to, then his translation, come back, O Lord, to Israel's teeming myriads, makes sense.
I'm okay. That's one way of reading a confusing text. Ray.
Oh, and he also I thought it was also interesting. He says that this text is called the Song of the Ark, and that these may only be the opening lines of ancient poems, and that the use of the upside down nuns is common in ancient literature to indicate a quotation, and that there's a number of those happen in Hebrew poetry quoted in numbers. Well, which ones?
We struggle with that, and Alter certainly is a voice to be listened to. Thank you for that. Ray?
Thank you. I will offer a possible reading or inference about this, very humbly offered as someone who doesn't comprehend Hebrew, and I'm very sorry about that, and I hope one day that will be different. But taking Rabbi Ashkenazi's explaining that the Hebrew literally only includes, correct me if I misheard this, please, return Adonai, Israel's myriads of thousands, and then on to verse, on to chapter 11. So with that, I could easily understand that a redactor working on this could also have made a note, Israel's myriad of thousands, as a sort of a placeholder or an abbreviation summarizing the text that is to follow. The people took to complaining in the translation I have. So speaking of Israel's myriads of thousands, what did they do? They took to complaining. I could see it as a note leaning forward. Just a thought.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. Thank you, Ray. We're going to move on only because there is this wonderful word it's a made up word, acronym, in the Talmud, which is teku. And teku is used by the rabbis when they've argued something thoroughly and cannot come to a conclusion. And so at the end of the text, they'll put in teku. And that just means we haven't figured this out yet. And so I'm going to say teku on this one. It is also true the teku is an abbreviation. And it's kind of fun because it's an abbreviation of the Hebrew word tekum. Let the matter stand. Let the matter stand. And so, yeah, we're going to let the matter stand because I want to talk about our ancestors, the lovely Israelites in the desert. Vayhiam kimit onanim ra ba'oznei Adonai. Tomorrow you'll notice how they use the word ra, evil here, and they don't translate it. But it's just fun. The people began complaining bitterly. Bitterly is not anywhere in the Hebrew. The word ra is in the Hebrew. They complained evilistically, evil. I don't know. It was a bad complaint. And it says before the eternal. The Hebrew doesn't say before the eternal. It says ba'oznei Adonai. And they may have trouble with that. The people, according to the text, were doing evil complaints into God's ears. That's what the text says. But of course, it's cleaned up nicely. The people complained bitterly, ba'oznei Adonai, and God heard and was incensed. That's fun. The Hebrew there is vayichar af, which basically means God's nose was red with anger. That's what it means. But now we find out that it means incensed. So the people began complaining much to God, and God heard and was furious. And so, what does God do? Vativ arbam eish Adonai, and a fire from God broke out in the midst of them and consumed part of the camp. When we get involved in the polemical discussion, if the God of the Israelites, the God of Torah, is a loving God, we have a lot at stake trying to claim that God in the Torah is a loving God. Except when God is pissed off. That's a technical term, vayicharaf. When God is really upset, what does God do? He fried some of the people. Remember two of Aaron's sons? They upset God. What did God do? He fried them. So God has kind of a trigger anger. And so God heard the people complaining. What were they complaining about? What were they complaining about? They just started moving into the desert. They had just started. Their tents are new. You know, the food trucks are there, whatever. And what happens? The people began complaining before God. God heard and fried them. Then the people cried out to Moses. Moses prayed to God. Fire dies down. Dies down is enough. I mean, I love this translation stuff. Dies down is interesting. When you're talking about the setting of the sun, you're talking about a Shekiah, the setting of the sun. And it doesn't say dies down. The fire set. It went away. What does altar say, Howard, with that? I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
Fire sunk down.
Sunk down. Yes. Thank you, Robert Alter and
Can I-
Stanley Davids, who knew that. But yeah,
So
sunk down.
why are we dealing with the translation? Let me just ask the question. It seems here we have several instances where we're spending a lot of time going down rabbit holes looking at an English translation where somebody decided that the actual what was written in Hebrew was too much for us little people to listen to, and had to put it in other words, and we're just going around in circles and tying ourselves in pretzels about what's not even in the text. Now, I know there's no way to know what's the original text is, but at least to stay with the Hebrew would be better, and not these all seem to be emendations that are just wrong.
Well, first of all, Howard, let's use scientific language.
Oh, sorry.
From now on, we are going to refer to the Ur text, UR, the original text.
Well, nobody knows what that is.
Well, fine. So we're dealing with the Ur text. What was the original? Translations are miserable attempts to put into another language that which poets and philosophers and teachers put into the Ur text.
But why not work with at least with a translation that's closer, not one that goes off and also.
The good news is that the world has listened to you, and okay, the world is listening, and the Jewish Publication Society will be putting out a brand new translation of the Torah. And I promise you, so that this translation that we have here will be set aside in favor of a new translation.
So the new one is going to be better than the other two that they did that were no good?
You're asking a heck of a lot.
By a committee? What is a committee going to come up with it? Whoever heard of a committee doing a translation?
Wait, you have to know that the first thing that happened is that there was an announcement that they are de-gendering God in the new translation.
Oh, wonderful. They're going in the other direction.
Howard, you're expressing some very personal preferences here.
Well, trying to be consistent.
A foolish consistency is the hobgoblin of small minds. And so consistency is not, an altogether great virtue. The immediate response is the Orthodox Union and many ultra-Orthodox organizations have condemned the as yet unpublished translation for having assaulted the image of God. So nothing is easy in our world. They will produce, it's not there yet, a new translation. At the same time, the women's commentary is going to be revisited tomorrow and reissued. There's going to be apparently a new women's commentary. And folks, we're a lot better off knowing Hebrew, so we can play with it ourselves. And there's still time. There's still time to pick up some Hebrew. Look, we're going to continue. I don't even really know. Alter gave us what the Hebrew says. The fire sunk. I'm not sure what that means, but it does mean that it died down. And then it's called Tavera. Now, you want to talk about translation? No, you don't. Okay. Verse 4. verse 4. Howard, read altar on verse 4.
Rabbi, before you go on,
Okay, Brent.
verse 2, where it says the people cried out to Moses,
It
and
says in verse 4.
Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down.
Yes.
Isn't it significant that the people didn't pray to God? The people cried out to Moses, and then Moses prayed to God. Isn't that telling us something about the state of mind of the people at this point? How unready they are if they don't their appeal is to a human and not to, they don't appeal directly to God. How dependent they are upon Moses still yet.
Well, this is portraying a time when the people didn't pray to God. I mean, only Moses talked to God. The people didn't talk to God.
Okay, let me just jump in here. Tamara says to everybody, different translators take different perspectives. For example, should you translate words literally or put them in contemporary idiom? Take the word Lord, that is not in the Hebrew. The Hebrew has a name, not a title. A name, not a title. And of course, we don't want the name. We don't want God to have a name, so we use the title. It's almost the same thing as Pharaoh. The word Pharaoh is used as a title, as a name. It's weird, as if Pharaoh identifies a single person, which it doesn't. Let me go back. It's such an important thing. The foundations of Judaism were based upon, involved intercession, intermediaries from the beginning. When the people brought their sacrifices, they, say the magic password, go into the temple, open up the door, there's the altar, and Joe, ordinary guy, would bring the lamb and do the whole ritual and offer the blood and this. Is that what happened? No. They used the priests. We don't know how to establish direct contact between ourselves and what we understand God. It is one of the greatest of problems in all Western religion. The people, even if you take this as post-exilic, the people are not addressing God directly. They are working through intermediary, intercessor. Somebody takes it and runs with it. The role of Jesus within the Trinity is just that. How do you get from the church to God? You've got to have an intercessor. Somebody's got to do it for you. And in some ways, Jesus is referred to as a priest. I fully accept that within Judaism, the only ones who have direct contact with God are ordained Reform rabbis. Okay? And
disagree.
But that's fine. But, I'll stick with that position. Do people ascribe to rabbis that kind of power? And the answer is sometimes yes. And it's very difficult to deal with without offending and turning off, and at the same time without being more arrogant than rabbis might conceivably be. I remember, and I forgive me for being autobiographical, but it is something I enjoy. When my original bout with cancer occurred in 94, and the death sentence was given firmly, and then to the disappointment of myriads of people, the death sentence didn't happen. How many times did people come up to me and say, well, you're a rabbi, your prayers probably were heard better than me when I was praying for my father and he died?
Right.
I am telling you, dozens and dozens of times. Needless to say, I kind of would mumble and defer and change things around. And, you know, do I believe that my prayer is more accessible to God, whatever that means, than anybody else's? No. But people from the days of this text till, oh, shoot. How did that happen? Risa, it's your fault. How did this happen? I don't, well, we'll turn back to it next year. The people turn to Moses because that's what they're trained to do, to turn to the intermediary, to the intercessor. I've got to stop. God, I don't know why. I got so much good stuff here.
Well, we started 10 minutes late, so I think we can go for a while.
Yeah. Well, I can't, unfortunately. Well, one of the fun things that's occurring is that I'm teaching 3 hours of a conversion class at Irmis now, and I'm going to be going.
Mr. Blazer.
So I love you guys. This is awesome. Thank you. We're going to go now to Kaddish. Wow. This was all right. Those who have passed away during the past month: Carl Kovitz, Jerry Fleischman, Louis Goldman, Sid Mandel, Paul Nesbitt, Naum Tickman. Yortsites that occurred during the past week: Sandra Aisley, Marion Paula Albert, Lillian Baker, Harold Benjamin, Max Block, Susan Blum, Fanny Brownstein, Theodore Brenner, Kenneth Brookman, Cheryl Cheater, David Chernoff, Sidney Chersky, Bernard Cooper, Sadie Crystal, Nisha Dane, Charles Daum, Bessie Enton, Samuel Epstein, Eileen Fine, Harry Feldman, Sarah Fields, Jules Firetag, Barry Fisher, Jerry Fishman, Marlene Friedman, Elise Friedman, Dorothy Gerstein, Lena Gilbert, Goldberg, Lori Gompers, Mort Green, Sheila Green, Joanne Greenwald and Grossman, Eleanor Heilbronn, Rose Katzen, Horn, Dr. Louis Itzkowitz, Erwin Jameson, Mary Jannell, Edith Jurich, Eddie Katz, Barbara Kaiser, Helen Klein, Alan Koppelman, Lenore Jacobson Kunz, Laura Landa, Ida Lehman, Robert Luff, Ronald Leaf, Dave Lewis, Elaine Rosenkrantz Lieberman, Devorah Liebner, Ruth Lunine, Stephanie Lieberger, Cyril Isaac Magnin, Donald Earl Marin, Mitchell Moore, Melvin Morgan, Darcy Notkin, Sidel Perlman, Michael Phillips, Robert Popkin, Bessie Provisor, Blanche Isaacson Pullman, Kenneth Randall, Marguerite Rissman, Herbert Rose Sr., Sue Rosenberg, Donald Rossman, Iris Trevach Rower, Rose Ruderman, Sam Sabah, Mabel Samter, Al Sabid, Frank Schiller, Betty Schwartz, Lloyd Chapoff, Jeanette Sherman, Samuel Schornstein, Evelyn Sidney, Barbara Siegelman, Francis Silver, Cynthia Silverstein, Morton Slater, Izzy Sloan, Cecilia Sonnenberg, Ruth Spielberg, Charles Stern, Irv Temkin, Jerry Linda Turtle, Sarah Wagner, Jack Waldo, Alex Weiskopf, Arlene Weeder, Sally Weiner, Suzanne Wolf, Hortense Wolf, Frank Zaitchik, Dorothy Zinberg, Jill Sue Suboff. I apologize for names that were mispronounced. If you have other names to be remembered now, please speak them aloud now.
Joshua Wolf.
Astrid Gilberto.
We bear in mind the names of those who died in defense of the United States, those who died in defense of the state of Israel, those who died through senseless acts of terror, those who have no one to say Kaddish for them. We will join in saying Kaddish for them all. Yet Gadal, Yalam Leomei, Yit Barak,
Amen.
Hey Shlama Rab, Chayim, Amen. Oseh Shalom, Booyah,
Shalom. Aleinu
Amen.
God who makes peace in the high places. Make peace in our hearts, make peace in our homes. Make peace in the household of Israel. Make peace among all the families and nations of earth. And let us say amen.
Amen.
Please remember that we are going to be adding on some extra current event classes. I'll be sending out about the dates during the summer. And Risa, I wish you well on your trip. Risa has a close friend who is desperately ill, and she's going to visit. And to all of you, thank you for today. A beautiful, beautiful day. You're beautiful. Thank you. Shabbat Shalom. Love you all. Thank you.